Hey guys, it's Ethan from Zimmer Labs, and this is Nick's Masterpiece MK1 that I just finished up. Nick wanted me to do a FullMetal Masterpiece level Roman props MK1 build for him. This is a weathered finish Roman props FX MK1, and what we did was opted to go with the Rudy Pando crystal chamber and the stock Custom Works chassis, printed in stainless steel and brass. If you pop the bottom off the pommel here, you get your access to your main kill switch, USB, SD card, and recharge port. And if you look in here, you should be able to see some accent lights that are circling around. If you unscrew bottom section of the hilt here, slide this section off to reveal the bottom portion of the chassis. This is done in stainless steel, the centerpiece, with the two cover pieces done in brass, but I electroplated them with nickel to match, and they actually look terrific as far as matching the steel part of the chassis. And this was semi-experimental because I wanted to do these parts in brass because brass is much easier and more malleable, so easier to work with in terms of ensuring that the covers will actually clip on and mount to those brass rods. Whereas the stainless steel version of this part is totally non-malleable and brittle and is much harder to make it clip on and be affixed permanently. It's kind of hit or miss whether it fits or not. So I figured if I did them in brass and then plated them with nickel, the look should be good and they should be much easier to actually keep in place. And it turned out that, as far as I can tell, I mean, I personally can't tell the difference between the nickel plated brass and the stainless steel. So that's a win right there. As far as the hardware inside, we've got Proffieboard right in here, 2020 neopixel strips running around, Physicom Bluetooth, 18650 Moly cell M35A battery, wrapped in black insulation and a brass hexagonal mesh wrap. And what we have down here is one of my signature heat sinks, which is kicking off the waste heat generated by the blade. It's an efficient system, but there's some waste energy dissipated as heat. So this turbine down here kicks off the waste heat into the pommel and out the bottom. And as you can see, it does heat up as it goes. And then cools off again when you turn it off. And this was a specific request Nick wanted included in the saber. On the front end, we've got, this is a custom made aluminum slug blade plug that I made on my lathe. Encased in a piece of blade tube. Very simple, little epoxy holding everything together and insulating. Stock Custom Works neopixel connector with a custom plexiglass diffusing ring and some nice shine through on the blade plug. Now for the money shot, if you open up the Graflex clamp, twist and slide will open. Rudy Pando crystal chamber with some custom elements added, custom brass piping, and some custom aluminum tubing that I turned on my lathe and patinaed to give it some additional detail. On the flip side, we've got some custom made aluminum fins, nice ultra thin individual fins mounted on the brass piping and a brass heat sink tube running through the whole thing. And of course, inside in the middle, the Stock Custom Works crystal chamber holders with 1.5 inch long quartz crystal. Now, what makes this guy new and different is the whole thing is spinning. In order to make this a spinning section, I had to sacrifice a little bit of the crystal chamber parts, the parts that have the cutouts. The reason for that is, in order to make this whole thing work, it had to be a single piece, because there's not enough room for a motor on both ends, so you can't make both ends spin independently. And the only way to make the whole section spin is to make the whole section a single cohesive unit mounted to a single motor. The motor up in this end, it has to go over here because the speaker is hanging out right here, as well as the illumination neopixel illuminating the crystal. But because of the motor, there's only the option to put one neopixel in this guy, and that became an issue because I didn't want the crystal chamber to be dim. I typically put at least 2 neopixels in here, but I did manage to make it work with just the one, and what I did to accomplish that was I used a little tiny lens, just like this guy. So I used that lens to mount the neopixel directly to it and to aim the light directly into the crystal, not have any light scattered or wasted elsewhere, so that it would be nice and bright. The problem with that, however, is you have to, in order to use a lens, you have to mount it to something. And the only thing to mount it to is the crystal chamber, which is spinning, which obviously isn't going to work because of the wires. So what I did was used ball bearings, and the ball bearings were going to be necessary anyways because these little electric motors just don't have that much power to speak of. And for one of them to spin this entire section and not just get stuck, it has to be incredibly well balanced and fit precisely. So what I did was I fabricated 2 aluminum housings that I installed the ball bearings, the roller bearings into, and then 2 aluminum axles that run through the ball bearings and into the aluminum housings, and that is what I mounted the lens to, and then I mounted the neopixel to that, so that this spins and the lens and the neopixel, which stays static and does not spin. In order to make this whole thing work, I had to put ball bearings on both sides, otherwise it wouldn't be enough power in this motor to make the whole thing spin correctly. But with the ball bearings added, it did work. Let me take it apart and I will show you guys a little more detail what I'm talking about. The best way to do that is to just break this guy down entirely. We got the fully modular, fully removable chassis, and So now, as I was saying, there's not room to get electric motors onto both sides and still have room for oversized speaker, oversized battery. You know, this chassis just isn't designed for any of this stuff. This chassis is designed for a 18500 battery, which is about this big, and for the speaker to go right here, and for the speaker to be a very thin, 3mm thin speaker. But what I like to do is machine this section out and mount a larger speaker into here, thus giving the extra room for this larger battery. But if you have the speaker here, you obviously can't put a motor in there and a neopixel in there. So the motor has to go on this side. So mount the motor in here, ball bearing right here, in the aluminum housing, another aluminum housing with ball bearing in it here, with the lens and the neopixel mounted right to it, then the speaker, and there's just enough room to make that work. So that's what we opted to do. And I think it came out really nicely. Nice and bright, even though it's only 1 pixel. Nice and smooth rotation. Now, if we jump back to the first blade, as a battery saving strategy, the crystal chamber doesn't spin on the first blade except during effects. So, clashes, you get a quick spin, blade lock up, continues to spin for it, but as soon as the effects stop, the spinning stops, therefore not burning your battery up, which is not a huge concern with the 3500 milliamp hour battery, but still, neopixels take up a lot of battery. So anytime you can reduce the amount of current that you're using, if it's not something you're actually, taking advantage of, like a spinning crystal, if it's covered and you can't see it, then it's kind of pointless to have it spinning. So the first blade is a battery saver. All the blades after that, everything following, it's going to spin in a sequential pattern. Each one is slightly different. So that's just something to keep in mind, Nick, if you're going to display it turned on at all. Leave it on the first blade just to extend the battery life. Now the next thing I wanted to do with this was to give the sound effects kind of a facelift. I made an effort to get a whole batch of new sound fonts and quotes for this guy, and it ended up being a lot of work, but really worth the effort. Let me set this guy up and I'll run through them with the Bluetooth real quick for you guys. Alright, so first blade.
Well, of course I know him. It's me. Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it? You don't need to see his identification. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Let's just say we'd like to avoid any Imperial entanglements. The Sand people are easily startled, but they'll soon be back, and in greater numbers. And these last points, too accurate for sand people. Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise. Hello there. Don't be afraid. Rest easy, son. You've had a busy day. You must learn the ways of the Force. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing. You've taken your first step into a larger world. I was once a Jedi Knight. What brings you out this far? That's no moon. It's a space station. I don't think your boys can help. Let's go alone. I felt a great disturbance in the Force. You must learn the ways of the Force. If you're to come with me to Alderaan, I think we better get indoors. The Force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded. The jungle and wastes are not to be traveled lightly. You're fortunate to be all in one piece. Come here, my little friend. Don't seem to remember ever owning a droid. You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Very interesting. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father. Be patient, Luke. Stay and watch over the droids. They must be delivered safely, or other star systems will suffer the same fate as Alderaan. You're fortunate to be all in one piece. In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
And now as far as sound phones go, I've reassembled everything, and let's run through the blades real quick so I can show you guys the new sound fonts. This is the first blade, nice bright blue. This is called Obi 4. Nice throaty growl for smooth swing. This is called Light Side Attack, I think. I believe that one is the Tusken Terminator. This one I think is called Kyber Blue. Or, no, actually no, I'm lying. This one is Bespin 2. This one I'm forgetting offhand, but it's one of my usual. This one is I believe Kinetic. That last one was Heroes Pack. This one is Tusken Terminator, I think. Swarm. Crossguard. It's called Spitfire. And then this one finally is Staple Sword. And this is a gradient fire blade. This was a blade that Nick specifically requested, and I made a whole bunch of different variants of it, and this was my favorite. But it's a 4-grade gradient blade, so 4 sections, all of which are doing a fire blade, all of which are using different colors, obviously. This is deep sky blue to blue, blue to magenta, magenta to red, and then orange to yellow. That's how you get that effect, and it looks good. It looks like it's throwing out the hottest part of the blade here and cooling as it reaches the end. And that is the blade array. Back to the beginning. And that's about it, I think. I'll leave you guys with one last look at the spinning crystal chamber. Let's jump back one blade. The first blade is essentially a battery saving option so that the crystal chamber is not spinning all the time. It only spins on effects, so for clashes, obviously. Blade lockup. Blaster block. But that actually looks pretty cool. And then all the remaining blades are pattern. The crystal chamber spins on a pattern, all based on a different sequence of numbers that repeat, and they're all slightly different, but you know, they all kind of look cool. And they're all based on what you guys have seen in the past in my previous spinning crystal chambers. So I won't go through all those and bore everyone to tears. But yeah, so that's this guy. And Nick, I hope you like it. Let me know. If there's anything you want to modify, just let me know. Everybody else, thank you for watching. The next up on my bench is going to be this beautiful Solos Hold Star Killer. Making this for Cameron. And I have started it, obviously, as you can see. But it is definitely in the early stages, but it's coming out really nicely, and this is a beautiful hilt. For those of you guys who are considering buying one of these, it's definitely up to par with what you expect from the quality from Solos Hold. I mean, those guys always do a nice job with hilts. This one I think might be even better than usual. The price tag is not inexpensive. I think these are around $1,300 just for the empty hilt. That being said, the build quality is incredible and the details fantastic, and the hilt is just absolutely rock solid. It's absolutely stunning. Not in its current state. I haven't actually attached anything yet. It's just all kind of being held together by my hand, but it is very, very high-end, very nice quality. So when it's done, I will show you guys how that came out. And that's about it, I guess. Thank you guys for watching.